We have three board, let me get to them. Let me find them.
I got the first one.
Mr. Shaw, Adult Ed, Greater Florida Consortium of School Boards. Mr. Shaw.
Over the last maybe 2 or 3 years, school board members from the Greater Florida Consortium consistently ask, are we ever going to reconsider joining the consortium? And, I've heard it enough that I thought it's time to bring it back and ask. We were a member for a while, and for a lot of reasons that were really important at the time, we did make a decision not to. I'd like for the board to give some direction on whether or not we would like to consider rejoining the consortium. I think the benefit to us of being in the consortium is probably outweighs some of the concerns, and I believe they've had some issues that they have been dealing with. So it's for discussion on the board to see if we're interested.
Ms. Brill, and then Ms. McQuinn.
Okay, so I want to start off by reminding the board of what transpired, because I'm really surprised to see this come back, given the fact that the structure of the consortium has not changed. For those that weren't here at the time, I was president of the Greater Florida Consortium a few years ago. As soon as I was sworn in as president, I got a phone call from Tom Serra, who's the lobbyist that runs the consortium, and he asked me to arrange meetings for their vendors with our district, to bring their vendors into the district. At that point, I refused, which is all in writing, in record. I said that their vendors can come to us the same as every other vendor, and that they would go through the process. So, of course, I immediately didn't endear myself to them. When I became president, the financial records came to the district, and Leanne Evans, who was handling their checks and the finances, raised the issue to me that she had some concerns. And I don't remember quite the order of it, but it did go to our general counsel, whereupon over the course of a few months we realized that they were operating as an entity, but were not a legal entity, and they were also operating as a tax-exempt entity without any basis to be a tax-exempt entity. So at that point, I asked what our exposure was, because if anybody scrutinized, here we are participating in an organization that's truly not an organization, and also acting tax-exempt and wasn't. And so I went at one of the meetings, and I believe Mr. Shaw and maybe Ms. Andrews were at the meeting with the Greater Florida Consortium, where I brought up the issue, and I was basically blown off by being told, well, Mrs. Brill, we've always done it this way, and so this is the way we've done it. No one's ever questioned us, and no, we're not going to do anything to form a more legal entity. At which point, Ms. Rico provided some information. I brought it to the board, and we voted to withdraw. So what I would ask is, before any consideration, if people are really seriously considering rejoining, I would ask Ms. Rico to provide the board with what transpired in the past and what the recommendation was, because I, for one, I don't have any problem with the consortium, although I will tell you that as far as their lobbying goes, I've not seen any real effective lobbying. Anything that they've worked on that's had success has also been lobbied upon by the Florida School Board Association. And so, for us to spend any taxpayer dollars to go into an entity that's not an entity, that doesn't have a track record, I'd like to know what their track record is on anything that they've done separate from the School Board Association, because to my knowledge, there hasn't been anything. It's a wonderful way to meet, have dinner, have drinks, and chat with other districts. We can do that without being a member. So I would ask for, if anybody is interested, that we ask Ms. Rico to provide that information.
Ms. McQuinn, first.
Yes. So this coming November, I will have been sitting in this seat for 3 years. So my first in-service, which I went to Florida School Boards Association as a new school board member and attended the sessions to help me understand better what my charge is. It was embarrassing to me, frankly, and I didn't know the history or any of the personnel issues behind things, but it was embarrassing to not be part of this consortium. I did not view it as drinking and socializing. I saw it as an opportunity for us to be part of like districts. And it was a little disconcerting to me, again, Ms. Newby, to see this chart, and there we are, a map, and we are the blank spot there. So I am usually very much for being part of a consortium that like problems can be addressed. So I agree with all of Mrs. Brill's to-do list, but I would like for us to consider being part of that again.
Mrs. Andrews?
And Ms. Brill, you know, we've been there, and I understand what you're saying. And they've been pretty nice to us. We've been going. Erica, I think you've been with me, and Barbara. We've been able to go to the meetings and get the information based on what their actually, their platform, their legislative platform would be. And we've been networking with the members anyway. But as I look at Central Florida, there's a consortium there, as well as the North, and we're South. I feel now that we're the only ones that's not there. And even though we brought it up, you brought it up, and we backed off. And I know Tom Serra, and he continually says, you know, I'm going to keep Palm Beach listed because we don't want to leave you all out as we're out lobbying, trying to do what's best to get the funding for our school districts. We don't want to leave Palm Beach off the list. And Mr. Shaw, you've been there with us as we've gotten the information since we've not been apart. They have not included us in actually providing the information. Certainly, I'm not in there partying with anybody. I'm kind of a teetotaler, but I like to get that information so that I can be a part of it. And we're right here with Broward, Miami-Dade, and the way the legislature is looking right now as we have to look at safety and those issues, mental health. I really want to make sure I can keep those lines of communications open. So, Ms. Rico, if there is something that we need to know, and we have these groups all over the state, and we're out and everybody else is in, I want to make sure that we can be in if it's not going to be a problem.
Mrs. Rico, you want to respond?
Just a quick comment to say that sitting here today, I really can't remember all of the issues, but I will dig up the former memo. I think it had to do with whether they were formed as an entity, and I'll just resend it out for your consideration. I don't really recall all of it sitting here today. Thank you.
Ms. Brill?
And I would just ask that you add to it what the exposure is to us, if somebody does, because you know right now we're in a climate with the Department of Education and the governor scrutinizing all the activities of school boards and all of the affiliations that they have. So I want to know if that gets scrutinized, what our exposure is individually and collectively as a board. Should we decide to rejoin that group? Because I do have concerns, as I said, about the way they are operating. And again, I would gladly rejoin them if they were willing to formalize their entity. I'm curious to see what the other consortiums, how they are structured, because if they're all the same way, I'd like to know what basis they're operating so that we aren't exposed.
Mrs. Whitfield, then Mr. Shaw, then Ms. Andrews.
All I wanted to say is I agree. I've gone to a lot of their evening get-togethers, and I think the issue with this state currently is that when there are people that are feeling similarly as we are as participants in the state, specifically as school boards, we have to align ourselves as best as we can with as many opportunities to network and to understand the issues that's going on with them. These are counties that experience very similar issues to us, and also very similar struggles with the state legislature. So to me, having that alliance is so important. I would want to know if we can, I know you said you're going to send out previous what you looked up 3 years ago, but if we could possibly have a little more research done into what their current state is, maybe something has happened where they are in an organization level right now where we could be more comfortable participating. I would very much like to participate with them. I think that would be very beneficial for us, but thank you to Ms. Brill for reminding us, because I remember the vote, but I couldn't quite remember why. So thank you for reminding us some of those details. So if we can get those worked out at all, I'd very much like to participate again.
Mr. Shaw?
And the decision that we made at the time to get out was there were a lot of issues that were very legitimate. I think the good thing is that the influence of vendors, because this was one of their lobbyists who just kept pushing vendors. I think that has gone away pretty much. I don't want to say 100% because it never goes away 100%. But the benefits we have and the issue of the nonprofit, each one of those school boards also had their attorneys look at this, and there was a very definite difference of opinion. On some said yes and others no. But I think the important part is that I know during the legislative session, the consortium had one room in the Capitol that was set aside for them to meet with legislators, and I spent one afternoon with them, and they had one legislator after another come in and meet with them. The benefit we get is for those kinds of activities. The other one is that the consortium operates on a basis of consensus. If every school district doesn't agree with a legislative piece on their platform, it doesn't go forward from the consortium. That, under the current, some of the political things that are going on in Tallahassee right now, is really critical to us because there were some issues that were coming out of Dade County during this last legislative session that had the potential of being a disaster for us related to DCD and some other things. So I think that it's something that we really should. And I think it's also a timely issue. So I believe that the board would probably have to actually have an item on the agenda to approve rejoining. So what I'd like to ask is that at least we try to identify when we could put it on the agenda for discussion after Ms. Rico's had a chance to get us some information and see that and have that chance for us to make a decision.
All right, instead of continuing the discussion at this point, is the board okay with let Mrs. Rico get us information on what if there's any adverse consequences as rejoining? And if Ms. Rico feels that we're okay with that, then we can get it on an agenda, and I'll put it on as a board item at one of the upcoming meetings. All right, everybody shaking their head yes?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Mr. Shaw, the next item is...
This one is really a very easy issue, and that's just to get a consensus from the board if this is worth considering. We've heard for months and months and years about the shortage we have for electricians and plumbers and HVAC and all of our tradespeople. I've had some conversations with Ms. Paul and with Red Barch on the possibility of us using our adult education department for us to do specific training in the area of some of our trades. For example, electricians, and for us to look at possibly creating a training program within the district using our maintenance people and hiring some people as a trades helper. Come in, you get a salary, you get the benefits, you're not getting a full salary as a tradesperson, but you would work with our tradespeople until you get certified as that electrician, and then we would guarantee them a job with the expectation, hopefully, they would commit to us for 3 to 5 years. I think that if we do it using our own people, it will help us with recruiting those high school students that are at West Tech and some of the other places that would have a way to get a job. But I also think it would not be in competition with Palm Beach State because we would be using people who are actually our employees, and then we would let the adult education department be the management tool for supervising and coordinating this. It also offers the opportunity then exists for us to look at CareerSource and some of the other agencies out there to do it. So the only thing I was asking was whether or not the board would like to ask Adult Ed to consider this, look at all the implications, because there are a lot of things that need to be considered before we could even do this.
Superintendent thinks it's a good idea. The rest of you okay? Great. Mrs. Andrews?
Thank you. All of you should have received the draft resolutions from the county of the Council of Great City Schools. Did everybody get it? Yeah, this is something that they're asking every district to do, a resolution. As you know, that the census is a big deal right now, and many times our children are undercounted. And as we look at federal funding allocated to schools for the next 10 years, we've got to really be on the money to get it done. So if you see the draft resolution, it's kind of laid out for you. You may want to preview it a little bit, maybe tweak it if you need to, but I'd like for us to have a consensus that we need to go for this. And one of the things they said is that we need to be coordinating with the cities and the county and all of us, and training our teachers as well as our students to be able to help us to get this count and to get the best count possible so that we can get the funding necessary for everyone, and especially our schools.
Everybody shaking their head yes?
Okay?
Would the general counsel just take a look at this and make sure that we're not doing anything like,
Bring this back for adoption next
Yes.
time?
everybody's shaking their head yes? Yes. All right, now Miss Bass? I'm done? Before we end this session, Mr. Burke, there's been a lot of discussion about your red face, so would you indulge us, please? Yes.
I was able to have a nice weekend out on the water.
Thank you.
Financially related this time.
The workshop's adjourned. We'll call this regular school board order at 5 o'clock.